you for joining us and welcome to Blunt Business. I'm your host, Sean Eubanks, Vice President of Business Development for STRAINWISE Consulting. And on our show today we have Dr. Michele Ross, who is the founder and executive director of the Denver-based Cannabis Research and Education 501c3 nonprofit called Impact Network. As a neuroscientist, she was frustrated by the lack of education on the endocannabinoid system both doctors and scientists receive, despite medical cannabis being used by millions of patients nationwide. In 2013, she founded the Endocannabinoid Deficiency Foundation, now known as Impact Network, with the mission to drive clinical research on cannabis for women's health. Dr. Ross is both a cannabinoid medicine researcher and a cannabis patient. After being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, neuropathy, and a chronic pelvic pain, cannabis was the only thing that reduced her symptoms and allowed her to return to work. After hearing thousands of extraordinary patient stories just like hers, Dr. Ross was compelled to ensure cannabis becomes part of the American healthcare system. Dr. Ross is a proud advocate of botanical and psychedelic medicine and has formulated and marketed nutraceuticals for companies around the globe. She has also been a leader in digital health and education, crafting continuing medical education for health professionals, as well as creating online communities for patients. She's also the author of 2 books, Train Your Brain to Get Thin and Vitamin Weed, a 4-step plan to prevent and reverse endocannabinoid deficiency. Dr. Ross holds a doctorate in neuroscience from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center and has researched addiction, mental health, and psychopharmacology for over a decade. Today, Impact Network is a leading medicinal cannabis research and education organization for women with the global reach to a worldwide medical cannabis community of patients, healthcare professionals, and clinical partners. Dr. Ross, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be able to share a little bit about what we're doing and where we're going in 2018.
Yeah, I so appreciate it. I need to thank you in advance for your time. I know you're in demand. You're traveling all over the country and speaking. You have a lot of phenomenal information on your website, drmichelleross.com. You do a lot of different things, and you speak on a lot of different things. You have a cannabinoid medicine boot camp as well. Dr. Ross, for our listeners, this is to me some of the most important things that we can do as STRAINWISE Consulting, bringing information to people. It's some of the most important things to discuss as far as the endocannabinoid system. I know some people listening, it's going to be the first time I've ever heard it. Can you just plainly tell us what the endocannabinoid system is, and is it indigenous to our bodies, and why is it important to someone listening who might have heard the words endocannabinoid system for the first time?
Sure. Well, endocannabinoid system is a mouthful, which is why you don't hear it out of people's mouths very often. The language around it is hard to say, right? From everything from, the actual, word for THC, cannabinol, cannabidiol, cannabinoid receptors. These are all things that are hard to say. But in fact, the endocannabinoid system is the most important thing in your body. It's actually the largest neurotransmitter system in your body. And for those of you who aren't neuroscientists, that's what a neurotransmitter is. It's a signal that talks between brain cells. And so other neurotransmitters in your brain include dopamine, which is the rewarding or pleasure chemical. You have serotonin, which is important for food and eating, and other processes. You have glutamate and GABA, which either excite or inhibit muscles and nerve communication. But the endocannabinoid system is really cool because it's not only just another neurotransmitter, it actually regulates all the other neurotransmitters. And so it's sort of like the fine tune for your system. And really, the endocannabinoid system keeps balance in your brain and body. So if you have something, where a certain neurotransmitter or a certain hormone is releasing too much in a certain area of the brain and body, your endocannabinoid system will, basically tell it to stop, either pump out more or pump out a little less. And when your endocannabinoid system is out of whack, unfortunately, that's when things start breaking down throughout the body. And so there's so much I could talk about with the endocannabinoid system. I'll just go really briefly into what cannabinoid receptors are. So for again, people that are a little less savvy about the brain, you have receptors, and so receptors are sort of like the lock, and endocannabinoids are the key, or any neurotransmitter is the key. So you need the right key for the right lock. So the two main cannabinoid receptors are called CB1 and CB2. That stands for cannabinoid receptor 1 and cannabinoid receptor 2. They're found in different areas of the brain and body, and they have slightly different ways that they work. So when the key goes into the lock, basically turns on sort of this domino effect. And so when you have either your endocannabinoids, which are anandamide or 2-HG, or you have a THC, that THC will bind to the CB1 or CB2 receptor. When it binds to the CB1 receptor, it can cause euphoria, or that feeling of getting high. It can cause anti-inflammatory actions. It can do a lot of different things in your body. When endocannabinoid or THC binds to the CB2 receptor, it's very different. It's mostly on immune cells. And it does things like reduce inflammation, and causes different immune functions. It's interesting that you have a system here. We have natural marijuana-like substances produced in our body. So, like, every single animal has this. It's not just humans. I mean, it's in monkeys. It's in birds. It's in almost every single living thing. If you remove the endocannabinoid system, in a lab from the animal, those animals are not going to be doing so well because, again, you're going to have too much of one neurotransmitter or the other, and that's really likely to lead to death for that animal. So you can't really remove the endocannabinoid system from a human. I know this because I've had angry people that are anti-marijuana ask me if they could. I think that's hilarious. I do want to say that besides cannabis, which is what I like to say, call marijuana, not marijuana. Besides cannabis, there's many actual other substances that can stimulate your endocannabinoid system. Even spices, for example, have some terpenes that can activate your cannabinoid receptors. There's terpenes in black pepper, and ginger, and all sorts of spices. So actually, every human is eating about 100 milligrams of dietary phytocannabinoids, or plant-based cannabinoids. So everyone is using cannabinoids, whether or not they know it, and again, your body is producing it, so it's natural. So I love to tell people about the system just because the doctors don't know about it, they don't know too much about it. It's not something they teach you in school, and as a scientist, they didn't really teach me a lot of digging around and research, but thankfully that's my job. So
Right.
I was able to do a lot of research and actually translate a lot of what I've learned from those got endocannabinoid system and bridging it with traditional medicine knowledge to be able to write like the first articles on say cannabis and cannabis aligned. Some of my articles, my research are actually translated to several languages, and it's just funny to go on the internet and like type in cannabis aligned. Probably get my articles. They're almost on every single website.
Okay, and for your this is great overview. Thank you so much for that. And just for people listening the first time, understanding, okay, there is some type of deficiency with the endocannabinoid system. Understanding maybe they're hearing for the first time, you do have an endocannabinoid system. You do have deficiencies there, and that lends itself to some familiar treatments that we have with nutraceuticals and essential oils and things that are people starting to understand certain deficiencies that aren't necessarily need to be prescribed by a doctor, but can actually help you, and you can have your own testimonials on as far as progress it makes, whether it's reducing anxiety and things like that. But for your specific diagnosis, you were diagnosed with fibromyalgia. How are you fighting that, and what are you using on a day-to-day basis to do that? Because there's no cure for that, and doctors are stumped on it as well.
Yeah, so any autoimmune or autoimmune-like disease, because technically fibromyalgia is considered an autoimmune disease, it's sort of controversial to classify it like that, but people with fibromyalgia actually usually have another autoimmune disease about small substances. So with any autoimmune disease or complex chronic disease, you have a variety of symptoms. For example, with fibromyalgia, spasms, you get chronic pain in different places and different days, different, severity of pain. But the pain is always there. That's one constant. You get nausea, headaches, all sorts of fun stuff. So it's really, a lot of people think that maybe, just take one pill and make everything go away, but it's actually a variety of cannabinoids that help me. And so I use a combination of things, of THCA, which is the raw version of THC, actually it's the form that's produced by the plant. So if you have a cannabis plant, right, it's making THCA or it's making CBD, it's all right. You actually need to heat that THCA up or decarboxylate it to turn it into THC. So THCA is something that's really useful for inflammatory purposes. So patients with arthritis, or any other autoimmune diseases really well. So that's something I take that I didn't know about initially, just because Colorado has very few products that have THCA in it. But it's one of those things where I'm going to talk about the other products I take, but I found that raw cannabinoids actually are very helpful with controlling inflammation. And the more inflamed I am, the worse my symptoms are. So raw cannabinoids are also what you hear about when you hear about people juicing cannabis. I don't juice it just because you can get some of the same cannabinoids in a tincture or other products. I don't unfortunately have lots of plants to go juice every day. But that's something where you hear people saying, oh, well, I juice cannabis. They're doing THC.
Okay, and sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Ross, but so for our listeners, so THCA is not decarboxylated yet, meaning heat has not been applied to it, hence you don't have psychoactive effects. So you're taking THCA daily for your fibromyalgia. What is the dosage and how are you taking it?
So with the dosage, it varies, right? So I do take it during the day, and I don't want to actually go through my whole regimen because I do coaching for fibromyalgia. So if that's okay,
sure.
I do take it, and then the other products I do use CBD. I use 25 milligrams of CBD every day. I use 25 milligrams during morning and 25 milligrams at night. That helps with pain. It helps with inflammation as well. It also helps with anxiety and depression because when you have a chronic illness, you usually have some kind of mood disturbances. And that's something that a lot of times patients don't want to talk about or people don't want to talk about publicly. I'm happy to talk about that because being in pain 24/7 is very stressful. It is hard to deal with mentally, and CBD is amazing because it does help relieve the anxiety that just comes with being sick all the time. And so it also helps you sleep because if you're anxious, you're not going to get sleep. And unfortunately, all these things snowball if you don't sleep well. And then your symptoms, all of your other symptoms, the spasms, the pain, headaches, everything else like that gets worse. And so you really need to reduce stress and reduce and get to sleep, and then also reduce the pain. Which all these things I just want to mention here because I don't think we touched on it yet. There's many cannabinoids in the plant. There's over 111 cannabinoids, and there's all these different terpenes too. And terpenes are substances that have medical benefits themselves, and they impart, the smell that we know for certain cannabis strains, like a lemon smell, a lavender smell, a piney smell. And all these cannabinoids and terpenes together, they have more effects than they do by themselves, and that's an effect called an entourage effect. So it's sort of like these compounds all have synergy together. So it's really important to point out, like, some people are like, oh, I just use CBD for it, or I do something else with that. Yep. I think it's really important to use whole plant medicine, and it's also very important to explore a wide variety of cannabinoids. We're just learning about all the different ones, right?
Yep.
I'm talking about THC, I'm talking about CBD, I'm talking about
okay.
There's all these other cannabinoids that we don't really understand what they do, or just because it was really hard to isolate them and get them in a that somebody would actually be interested in. For example, like there's CBC, this is one different purposes. CBC, some of them anti-cancer, some of them anti-inflammatory, some of them are antiviral. So I will say this to any listener at home. that cannabis medicine is really personalized medicine, and so you can listen to regimen I take, right? And it may not work for you because you may have a different stage, of your disease, or you may have a different medication history. Your liver may be different. So, for what I do, I always, survey the patient, get their medical history, and find out really, what their stress level is, what their lifestyle components are, because there's certain people, if you have a really stressful job, you're going to need a higher dosage of cannabinoids to sort of offset what's going on in your body and your brain. And somebody who has a very peaceful, very fulfilled, very healthy diet life, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Ross. We need to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll be joined by Michele Ross, who is the founder and Executive Director of Impact Network. During the break, check out. Welcome back to Blunt Business. I'm your host, Sean Eubanks, Vice President of STRAINWISE Consulting, and we have been talking to Dr. Michele Ross, who is the founder and Executive Director of Impact Network. Welcome back, Dr. Ross.
Hi.
Okay, so when we left off last time, we were talking a little bit about your fibromyalgia, and the summation of that, the most impressive thing I heard was you're taking THCA to some degree. That's not decarboxylated. It's not, you're not experiencing the psychoactive parts of the plant. I think our listeners could gather from the first segment that you were, that they can take cannabinoids without getting high and having that psychoactive effect, and just isolate the medicinal benefits of it. Okay, you also were diagnosed with neuropathy and chronic pelvic pain. Are those different protocols that you use, or are you able to kind of work that all into your daily regimen to feel relief?
So great question. So what's nice about cannabinoids is that you can treat the root of the disease rather than trying to focus on each different disease. And so the root of all disease is inflammation. And thankfully, CBD, THC, THCA, almost all the cannabinoids reduce inflammation. So as opposed to trying to use, okay, I use this product for nerve pain, I use this product for my nerve, or I use this product for my pelvic pain, I mean, really any cannabinoid is going to help reduce the pain and the inflammation associated with that. So there's very few times where I'm like, okay, I have to use something very different for this. With the chronic pelvic pain, for example, I would say that if you use suppositories, and that's something that people don't even know that cannabis exists like this. It's either you can put it up the butt or up the vagina. So of course I'm the person that says vagina and still on the podcast. So I apologize.
No, I apologize. I'm now 13 years old. I'm laughing at something I shouldn't think is funny. No, sorry. No, that makes two of us. All fair.
But it's something that's so important. It can help to actually treat, say, colon pain or colon issues. Treat pelvic pain. I mean, why not put the cannabinoids right where it needs to be? And when you eat cannabis or smoke cannabis, it's not going to go in that targeted region. So it's almost like when you do sit-ups, tone your abs. Well, I'm like, well, if you understand this whole spot zoning idea, well, obviously you get the suppositories where they need to be. So for me, I use suppositories once a week, minimally, and then if for some reason I'm having more pain for some issues, I'll use a little bit more frequently, but it's definitely something THC, CBD suppository is my go-to in preventing flare-up in pelvic pain.
Well, and one of the things that I'm so grateful that you're doing, Dr. Ross, is your Impact Network is about women's health. And when someone looks at that, they think, okay, what about men's health? Absolutely, men's health is important. Organizations need to be founded for men. There needs to be a lot more work being done for men. I think men are being forgotten by and large. However,
I won't forget you.
Oh, thank you. But by and large, I think just the work that you can do for menstrual cramps and things like that, and understanding, just like you just talked about, is how to take cannabis, how to introduce it to your body in the most effective, efficient way. But there's so much progress, and the reason why I'm proud of what you're doing, Dr. Ross, is I think eventually we are going to get to men. When women are using this as readily they are for menstrual cramps and for their period, to treat things, there's already a couple products out there already that are doing that. I think it's well known. It's almost laughable at this point that the DEA is refusing to reclassify and saying that cannabis is not medicine. It's just insane. It's probably one of the last things that our great country needs to just rectify and get better at. But I think the work that you're doing for women's health is going to translate over to men as well.
Well, and I do want to point out that there is actually huge use of rectal suppositories for men, and that's for prostate cancer.
Okay.
So you can make suppositories out of ricin oil to treat prostate cancer, and there's several groups that are doing that very successfully across the country. So definitely, it's funny because people are like, oh, well, you're a women's health research institute, we are leaving men behind. Really, there's very few things that don't translate from men to women. So we're not just, looking at pelvic pain. I mean, we're looking at cannabis for mental health, cannabis for autoimmune disorders, and most of the conditions we look at impact both men and women. So we're just more about helping women because they're the caregiver, they're the caretaker. So if the mom is sick, the child, the family is going to be taken care of, and most families too. The woman takes care of the man, or the other partner. So we really need to work on the caregiver of the family because the caregivers think everything falls apart. And we think that once you make the woman healthy, they can take care of their family, or they can get back to work, or they can get back to doing whatever they used to do before they were sick. And unfortunately, women are a lot softer than men. We're just, we've taken toxins from the environment, we're stressed out, we have bad genes, what our issues are, we have a monthly cycle. So, it's really important that we get women back to the healthy that they deserve so that everyone can have an amazing life.
Well, and I feel like I'm having this conversation with you, Dr. Ross, and I can kind of look back in this a couple years from now and say I knew her when, because you're doing about 20 different doctors' work. I mean, you touched on cannabis for cancer, you touched on prostate cancer. There's a lot of information coming out now that cadavers now are being discovered to have had prostate cancer. So a high percentage of men have prostate cancer when they die, even though it doesn't kill them. We're living a little bit longer. We're learning how to be healthier. The endocannabinoid system in itself is something that's been left off of research, and just for some reason it's a system that's not included. It will be included within our lifetime sometime. But yeah, you are doing work that's tremendous for seniors and for cancer. You do a medicinal boot camp. You do cannabis for brain health. How do you stay focused, Dr. Ross? Because there's so much work to be done, and there's so much room for doctors like yourself to come into this space.
Yeah, so it's really important to realize this is a team effort, right? It's going to take all the different cannabis nonprofits across the United States. It's going to take training the next generation. We want as many doctors and scientists to know about the endocannabinoid system and applications as possible. So that's why I do a lot of traveling. I'd love to be able to educate other nonprofits and their members, especially in non-cannabis spaces. One of my favorite things, I just gave a talk on cannabis and cancer for the Colorado Cancer Coalition. It was the first time they let a cannabis talk in. And in fact, we're partners, so they actually expect us to be able to present data on how cannabis legalization has impacted cancer survivorship for different types of cancer in the state. And it was just amazing, the reception there. I mean, all these cancer nonprofits, most of them, I would say American Cancer Society is not a fan of the cannabis industry, but most other groups were very, very receptive to learning about how cannabis could treat cancer, also how to help survivors of cancer, because you have a whole bunch of other things that go along with it. You survive cancer, but you're still not healthy. Like, there are things that are wrong, especially if you've had chemotherapy. And also using cannabinoids to prevent cancer. As you said, when we're having cadavers that are found to have prostate cancer when they weren't diagnosed, like, the reality is you and I both have cancer. Every single human has cancer cells in them, and it's really, it takes the cancer cell growing to the point, like, for over 10 years where you detect it. So if we could freeze all the cancer cells in our body so that they never turn into and identify a full tumor, I mean, imagine if you have like a breast cancer cells and they just never grow into breast cancer. I mean, that's the ideal. And that's like, we're clearly like 20 years away from completely understanding how to do that. But I actually think that cannabinoid medicine is going to, until we have, live a cancer-free world. Or cancer-free life and live in a cancer-free world. I think that cancer is going to be like one of those, like, that was, one of those diseases that no one gets anymore.
Right. I mean, and it could lead to, overpopulation and things like that. That might be different issues. But I agree with you. We're kind of going to look back on that, and we're a forgiving country. We forgive times of national tragedy, and we overlook some things that aren't necessarily, we look at that and think, the government might not have done that the way that, I don't think they had our best interest in mind. There's some disappointment there, but I'm assuming we're going to forgive for this. But in your opinion, Dr. Ross, is there a reason why cannabis has been forgotten? After developing Marinol in the 70s and trying to mimic synthetic cannabis and failing at that and producing a subpar product, they had to have known in the 70s that it was something that they know could at least be taken in tandem with different types of chemotherapy. It's a $170 billion industry. I just returned from Ironman, Arizona last week, and there are 3 new cancer nonprofits founded, and I'm like, why are you guys founding these nonprofits for F cancer and all these things? That's a cute slogan, but there's research that needs to be done. Susan G. Komen fails at this to look into cannabis to do that. What do you think is going to be the tipping point where people start, these organizations that pretend to find a cure, start to look at cannabis?
That's a great point. It's been something that's really frustrated with our organization. We've been doing outreach for about the last 5 years to all sorts of different groups, like, for example, ALS, right? That's a terminal condition that goes really fast. About 3 years, once you're diagnosed, you're dead. And cannabis is actually one of the only things that actually slows down the disease. And there's people that have been living for decades using cannabis. And to me, when I saw the Ice Bucket Challenge, it was great. It raised, hundreds of millions of dollars for it. But then when you find out that they're not doing the cannabis research, even though there's tons of preclinical and anecdotal evidence for it, I mean, it made me so sad. So it's going to take some time to get the major nonprofits on board. Some of the outreach I've done where, like, huge organizations are like, well, if all of our smaller chapters, across the country are down, maybe we can do this. But, like, it's a process. And I want to say this, that I have so much respect for my colleague, Dr. Sue Sicily, who has done a lot of outreach for the American region in terms of getting support for cannabis research and cannabis treatment of veterans, specifically for PTSD. That took a long time because there's all these different little groups. And I mean, that's why this is, like, so much bigger than me or any other person or organization. It takes every single person in their own stage, city, reaching out to a fibromyalgia association, reaching out to a cancer association, and standing up and, like, not being scared to tell the other people in your community that this is my medicine. Even if it's in a state where it's not legal, to have those conversations, because if no one knows another cannabis patient and no one realizes that this is a treatment for their condition, it doesn't move anywhere. I was shocked to hear, at the cancer conference, that there were so many groups out there that were like, yeah, I've used cannabis, didn't tell my doctor, I didn't tell the nonprofit. I'm like, you volunteer at a cancer nonprofit, you were afraid to tell them that you use cannabis? I'm like, this is a problem. So reducing the stigma, reducing the fear, and and just not staying complacent is really important. In Colorado, we have Berkeley and we have cannabis, medical marijuana. So people are like, there's cannabis everywhere. We don't need to, fight for anything. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There's so many groups here that still don't think that this is medicine. That think that medical marijuana is a joke. That people shouldn't have access to it. So, we have to be vigilant and we have to be proactive about changing the minds and hearts of everyone.
That's a great point. I liken the noise in the cannabis industry much like the mainstream media that we hear today, where it's sort of, if you just turn on the news, you think that the country is on fire, the world's burning, and it's coming to an end, and then you have interactions with people, different races, ethnicities, religions, backgrounds, and your face-to-face, one-on-one interaction with them lets you know that people do care about people on a personal level. And I think with you coming on to podcasts like this and you're talking about your fibromyalgia and your specific treatment, those are powerful testimonials. So please keep speaking up and keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I have been so passionate about this plan, just because I'm married into cannabis too. I don't think I shared that part of the story, but the co-founder of my nonprofit was my husband, and Todd, and he'd actually been in the industry forever, growing cannabis and having an edible company up in California, and so it was just sort of funny when you see how many people have benefited from this plant, and also it's really important to have scientists that understand the cannabis industry. Like, there's a lot of scientists out there that think that this shouldn't be a pharmaceutical, that we should make Marinol, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that, or we should have a super CBD or some kind of super form of THC that's 1,000 times more potent for cancer treatments or things like that. But I do believe in the ability for people to treat themselves and heal themselves, and I really think that cannabinoid medicine is a shift to the empowered patient. You don't necessarily need a doctor to tell you the exact dose and choose for you what your pain relief is. I really love the fact that patients can play around with this medicine and figure out what is the best sort of administration for them. Is it a lotion? Is it a patch? Is it a tincture? Is it, is it smoking it? I think that there's a lot of things here that put the medicine back into people's hands, and I'm a huge fan of the industry. Of course, there's a lot of things that we need to, always self-regulate and improve on. But it's been really important for me as a cannabis patient, as somebody who's married into the cannabis industry, and as a cannabis scientist, to respect the dispensary system and the cannabis industry in general.
We need to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Michele Ross, who is the founder and executive director. Welcome back. You're listening to Blunt Business on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Sean Eubanks, Vice President of Business Development for STRAINWISE Consulting. We've been talking to Dr. Michele Ross. Dr. Ross, welcome back.
Thank you.
So, in all that you're doing for the cannabis industry in general, you found some time, I don't know where or how, but you've authored 2 books. The first one is Train Your Brain to Get Thin. Is it cannabis related, or does it have anything to do with that, or is it just a general help book that you wanted to write?
It was just funny. I had on my to-do list to write a book before I was 30 because I have all sorts of crazy goals, and I actually was contacted by the publisher of, there was actually a series of Train Your Brain to Be Rich and a whole bunch of other things, but they wanted a weight loss book. And as a neuroscientist, I studied weight loss, and also as a formulator of different nutraceuticals, I did a lot of weight loss work. So it was a good fit to write a book on the neuroscience of weight loss. So, obviously not my first choice, if I had to write a book, to go into that field, because it's sort of, weight loss is important, but it's also very soft science. But it's a foot in your door, to be able to get a book out there. Our book was actually reviewed on the Today Show and things like that, and we had 0 PR or marketing behind it, so it was selected for a bunch of good things.
Well, no, that's great, and I think it's valuable because you start to understand what's going on with your body. When you ingest certain food, you start to crave it. Your stomach reacts a different way. We know that your stomach has its own intelligence. Your gut feeling is where that comes from. We know that serotonin, the majority of it's produced in the gut. There's so much valuable information in there, and I love a neuroscience-based book on getting thin. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, vitamin weed, though, this is where it gets a little bit dicey. I was excited about this book. I wanted to read it before bringing you on because I wanted to talk to you specifically about it. I wanted to bring as much awareness to the actual endocannabinoid deficiency, which I think we've covered that. But you have had recently some trouble that is just indigenous to the cannabis industry, where you were shut down online for selling a book called Vitamin Weed, a 4-step plan to prevent and reverse endocannabinoid deficiency.
Yeah, so we had our book pre-orders on a site called Celery, and it was powered by Stripe, and I have now lost 7 Stripe accounts. So Stripe is the processing sort of like PayPal, and so each time I was told that even though I'm not selling cannabis, that I'm associated with a cannabis-related educational website, and so Stripe is actually powered by Wells Fargo, and it's funny because Wells Fargo does work with dispensaries and things like that, so you have an inconsistent policy where they're going, well, you tell people about cannabis, so that makes you illegal. And we know that that's not true. There's freedom of speech, but of course, businesses can choose to drop cannabis nonprofits, they can choose to not allow sales of books, even though that sounds very weird and very very anti-American, to be honest, because we're going about this as a medical book. This is highly referenced book. There's nothing in there that's like, and here you go, like, to this cannabis dealer, you go pick up your weed. Like, it's such a medical book. Like, take out cannabis and replace any other, botanical medicine in there, and I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, if you say oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry. Like, if you say magnesium deficiency, then you can sell books all day long.
Yeah, and I worked really hard to try to make things as less cannabis-y as possible, right? It's like, there's no big weed over my book, but it's just funny. So this book actually, I had started writing it in 2015, and I had an agent, a book agent actually, for my previous book, and it was funny, back in the day in 2015, she told me that no matter, what, that the world wasn't ready for positive cannabis books, and if there were anything else, she would put it on the market, but she refused to shop a cannabis book, and I was just like, can you take your personal views, somewhere else? And it was so funny, because now there's so many different cannabis books on the market, and so it was just a real struggle for me to actually find groups that were receptive to this. So it's just crazy, because I was one of the first people to actually do all the research on this stuff. Now people are like, oh wow, like, your book has been held up and all these problems. I'm like, yeah, I think it's partly because I have a very public profile. I did a lot of TV work, on TV for like 5 years and stuff, and so for some reason I always get dates. So it's just like, when you're more vocal on the internet and, in real life, you can get, a lot of obstacles from different things. So unfortunately, I fall on the sword for a lot of people, but I'm sure we are going to find another platform to get the book out by the end of the year.
Well, and wasn't the initial trigger for them that people with cannabis-specific email addresses? That's kind of what triggered it?
Yeah, so I mean, I really tried to shame them into turning back on the account.
Right.
Because I have a social media following, and I was like, I'll write articles on this, and they're like, you really don't care. One of the reasons that I gave was that people with state dispensary account or business, right, were asking about it. So the assumption is that the money is going from the illegal sale of a Schedule I product, is paying the employee, and the employee is taking that money and purchasing a bulk. So it could have been I guess if I had a book about mosquitoes, that all of the purchasers were employees of dispensaries, they would still have a problem. So who knows? I just feel like I'm always a lucky person, and I'm just like, why is it so hard? But by working through the system, it's funny, it's like silver linings, right?
Yes.
There's been a lot of things that have been really troublesome, but they also highlight, that justice in the system. And then when you find injustice, then you can work to change it so that no one else has to go through it.
Well, and I think I applaud your focus, right? Because if obviously Wells Fargo's open to criticism. They're not, they're kind of like the Uber of banking. Every 6 months a new scandal. You're like, wow, you guys get it together. But in any event, I think you have to disconnect it. It's very easy to take shots at them, and I love that you're staying focused and you're just trying to get the information out and do that. I want to shift, Dr. Ross, to you to talk about cannabis for children. If someone has a kid that's maybe taking Ritalin or antidepressants or things like that, obviously if they have epilepsy, there's, even in the state of Texas, you can now get CBD oil for that. So undeniable medicinal benefit there. But if there's a parent out there that wants to contact you and talk about that, I mean, what's the process? Do you have them fill out some questionnaires? How do you consult them on a possible specific customized cannabinoid profile or treatment protocol, if you will?
Sure. So we're actually a really small organization. I mean, we're doing so much already with training and legislative stuff that we limit any cannabis consulting to adults. That just helps us with liability issues. I just want to point out here that there are actually several great groups across the United States that are really focused on pediatrics, including autism and epilepsy. So from Realm of Caring is one that's found in Colorado Springs. There's also Canna Kids that's out in California. There's another group in Delaware as well. So as a expert in the space, you can only be an expert on so many things. And I think that's really important because sometimes people, they've had unfortunately a child with, seizures for 7 years, and they're like, Dr. Ross, help. And I'm like, okay, I'm already working an 18-hour day, to be able to go through all that and be able to do it pro bono is really, really difficult. So we try to work with adult patients that we have treatment protocols in place for, and that are not as difficult. It's really difficult, for pediatrics. I'm working with a pediatric cancer patient, you're fighting against the law, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to help children, but it's an issue. A lot of the parents that need help for their children aren't even living in rural states. For example, in Texas, right? The CBD oil law there is really difficult to obtain the CBD. There's only 4 or 5 doctors that will write a prescription for CBD oil, right?
Yeah.
So you have to keep abreast of the laws. You have to keep abreast of the fact that some of these parents might get in trouble with the law for treating their children. It's very, very difficult. And I applaud the mothers and the groups that have been founded based on the fact that they had a fight for their children. So amazing people out there, both in the United States and Canada too. But we just try to work with adult women just to keep it a little bit more focused, and also work within our state's expertise.
Speaking of keeping abreast, you have a segment called Love and Marijuana, and you say, to another pun you leave there is how to spark your sex life. How do you do that? Is that through smoking? Are there specific strains that you recommend? This is obviously on the recreational side. You've got a little bit of leeway there. What are your recommendations for Love and Marijuana?
That's funny. So I actually kind of love background from doing sex education apps and working a little bit in the sexual health research space. So it was just funny when I discovered cannabis myself. It was very interesting to find out that it's amazing for bedroom type of things. And so for me, it's about using cannabis in a way that is appropriate for your life, right? For some people, that could be using a THC infused massage oil, right? If you don't want to get high, that could relax you and make you feel, again, bonding with your partner, making them feel more in the mood. For some people, smoking cannabis is helpful, right? You can actually put them in the mood. There was a lot of research earlier that would suggest that cannabis was bad for sexual experiences, but in fact I saw it debunked. My favorite way to recommend for couples to experience cannabis is to use edibles. I think that can actually make the bedroom experience into actually more of a spiritual experience. It's very interesting. We don't talk about cannabis too much in the medical world, as this amplifier of sensory experiences and bonding, but cannabis can actually help with oxytocin, which is the bonding neurotransmitter, neurohormone. And so when you have oxytocin release when we have orgasms. If you're a couple, right, and you want to connect better with your partner, you want to be able to talk to them about things that are difficult, or you want to open up, or you just want to explore with them, cannabis is a really, really great medium for that. And there's I talk maybe 2-3 hours at length on cannabis for both relationship building and sexual experiences, so that we won't be able to touch on everything that I talk about right here.
No, right. Now, this is not what led to your chronic pelvic pain, is it? That's different.
I'm sorry, the cannabis?
Right, yeah. No, I'll tell you what's funny. I saw an article recently that said, it was trying to be, there's a lot of negative press out there, and it was saying that, watch out for the dangers of people who use cannabis have more sex and things like that. And I thought, wow, with a willing partner, with someone who you love and you care about, what is the harm in that? It didn't make sense to me, and it just seems like nationally they're just reaching for the last straws. This thing started with reefer madness and the misinformation that was put out, and now I feel like we're at the end of that, where people are just sort of tuning that out. But no, I appreciate all of that. You are doing something very important. You're raising money, Impact Network. Tell us about that and what the deadlines are for that. And most importantly, one of the things I love about what you're talking about is where this money goes and why it's important to raise money for your nonprofit.
Sure. One of the things I talk about across the country is about the lack of clinical research on the medical benefits of cannabis. And it's sort of shocking, right? Like, if you look at women's health, it's public pain. There's not a single paper published. And then people say, well, why didn't your group publish it? Well,
right.
Unfortunately, scientific research isn't free. It costs money to publish in journals. It costs money to analyze data. It costs money for all the legal and insurance bells and whistles that go along with enrolling patients. And when you enroll a patient in a study, you're responsible for them. So there's a lot of things that could go into research. Even if I wasn't ever paid, none of the other scientists were paid, there would still be costs involved. And so because we can't get federal grants for the medical benefits of research, state grants, even Colorado, people go, well, the marijuana tax money funded all this research. I actually helped put on a conference last week called the CORE, or 2 weeks ago called the CORE Network Conference, and it was marijuana research funded researchers, and they're like, we all ran through our money, and it was really focused on harm research first, not benefit research. So the money does not exist for research on the state or federal level, and then nonprofits like Susan G. Komen are very scared to try to fund cannabis research because of either losing their donors or current fears about the current administration. Like people are like, Jeff Sessions come and raid all my millions of dollars if I give to you. And so that's not true, by the way. That's fear and that's stigma. It's not illegal ever to donate to a 501c3 nonprofit, especially one that's associated with the National Institute of Health. We're completely papered up and legit. So there's no issues with donors donating, but there's still a lot of confusion, and it's like we already have to educate about cannabis being helpful, and then we have to educate them that it's legal to donate to a cannabis research nonprofit. So it's a lot of roles for us. But so where your dollars go. So I think I've already had the publication in journals. We also have a technology tool that allows us to do research and support patients through their journey with chronic disease, and we're piloting it right now with cancer patients. So we can do research at a much cheaper level than a double-blind clinical trial, which could cost up to $2 million or more. We have a platform that we can track people and get all the data that we need to be able to publish in scientific journals. So when you look at the cost of enrolling one patient for a year, that's $250. That's very, very little compared to the thousands of dollars that a patient in a normal study costs.
And so $250 covers the cost of one cancer patient in research, and then $1,000 covers the scientific paper publication in a journal. So a lot of work being done there. So you have Giving Tuesday, which is next Tuesday, November the 28th. That's the day after Cyber Monday. And so it's 1 day of online giving to charities. How do we just go to impactcannabis.org/donate? How do we get there, and how do we make a difference?
Sure. So that website that you just stated, impactcannabis.org, not .com, /donate. That gives all the options of how to donate. And I know some people don't feel comfortable donating online. There's an address on the check. There's also different things from credit cards that you can sign up for, where your bonus rewards go to our nonprofit instead of back to you. There's a lot of different ways that you can give, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that day. Giving Tuesday is fun though, because it's sort of interesting to see how different nonprofits, how much money a nonprofit can raise in 1 day, because some nonprofits raise 25% of their annual budget in that 1 day. So it's sort of like a fun event that brings everyone together. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy about America and the world again, because right now we're everyone is just we're experiencing a lot of chaos, and it's nice to see that people still care to give back and they support. So we're one of the few actual papered up and legit cannabis groups, and to be able to see if we can get the same kind of support as traditional nonprofits is important, because everyone goes, well, if people really believe that cannabis was a medicine, they would be donating as much as they do to Susan G. Komen and these other ones. But You got to realize that we're young. We've not been in existence for that long, and also there's so much stigma. So we're really proud. If we raise $10,000 in Giving Tuesday, that means so much to our organization. That helps supplement some of the small grants that we receive from other nonprofits, like Drug Policy Alliance is one of our supporters as well. But every dollar counts and every dollar is tracked, and we put out an annual report every year. So again, we really appreciate any dollars that you can put towards this. It helps us be able to show the doctors, the legislators, and families that this is a real medicine, and that we have the data to back up our treatment protocols and really change the face of chronic disease in the country.
Okay, so that's impactcannabis.org. I'm still really excited about getting your book. When is that going to be worked out, you think, with Wells Fargo and others? When will I actually be able to purchase it online? And I can go to drross.com to pick that up, correct?
DrMichelleRoss.com. So we're still working that out.
Yep.
So I don't have a date for that, but we're hoping by the end of the year.
Wonderful. And for those of you who are listening to our database at STRAINWISE Consulting, I will do a blast for Dr. Ross's book, because I think it's an incredible way to get started. Dr. Ethan Rousseau, there's a lot of good stuff out there, but this focus on the endocannabinoid deficiency is where I think all of us cannabis consumers should start if you're curious about it and you're interested in what this can do to help you. Well, Dr. Michele Ross, thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you all for joining us again on this edition of Blunt Business. You can download episodes of our program by going to cannabisradio.com, bluntbusinessradio.com, or subscribing to our show on iTunes, Stitcher, and now on iHeartRadio. Have an outstanding rest of your week, everyone, and we will see you next week.